Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome. Monday, December the 18th, 2023. Hope you are all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show, and it feels good to be back. I was sitting here thinking just before we went live, it feels like it's been forever since you and I last spoke here on these airwaves, but here we are. Here on this Monday, I see John Edward, Brian Dean, Peyton Smith, Travi, Cameron Blassingame, Ethan K, Xavier. Appreciate you all tuning in. Also, those in our Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel, the TDC Questions channel. To be sure, your questions are answered there, guys. When I say we have got a jam-packed show for you, I mean we have got a jam-packed show, lots to get into, guys. Literally, we have so much content. Some of it's going to bleed into tomorrow. We couldn't even get into all of it because of so much going on, so much to discuss. Obviously, so much happening since we have been here in the saddle, from what South Carolina is doing in the transfer portal, what's happening in the SEC in the portal, including Lane Kiffin and company just dominating the portal right now. We'll talk about all that. Obviously, guys, the 2024 SEC schedule has officially been released in its entirety. We'll talk about that tomorrow, actually. Again, that's how much we have going on, guys. It was one of those things I wanted to get into and discuss today, and I put everything together, put our show notes together, and was like, dang, I forgot that is there. So that just goes to show you how much there is to discuss and talk about. But again, guys, today's show, we're double dipping on guests, by the way. Our good friend Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate, he will kick off the show here in a couple minutes. And we continue along with our SEC team reviews, season reviews, what have you. Our good friend Neil Shulman of InAllKindsWeather.com, Florida Gator man, he will take the podium and take time on our airwaves to talk all things Florida Gators. Look back at a 5-7 campaign for Billy Napier and company. We'll also talk a little bit of men's basketball with him and get kind of a gauge on what they look like this year. Also, guys, we're still previewing these bowl games, right? We're talking today Ole Miss and Penn State, the Peach Bowl that'll take place near the end of the year, December the 30th, at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. Guys, I'll give my full thoughts, preview, prediction on that game. And, of course, guys, we'll squeeze in some questions, some comments, some voicemails as well at the end of our show in the daily mailbag segment. So again, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. I can tell John Edward is on one today, coming out the gates on fire with his comments towards Marc Ryan and saying that Beamer is A+++++ in the transfer portal. So I'll tell you whether it was A+. I'll tell you whether it's not. Also, guys, hey, huge week. We've got National Signing Day on Wednesday. Our good friend JC Sherbert is going to join us tomorrow to talk all things Gamecocks and signing day and what to look forward to and what things may happen, what dominoes may fall, if you will, on National Signing Day. So looking forward to that, guys. Again, it's a jam-packed show, lots to get into. It's a crazy, crazy week. And again, guys, you think to yourself, okay, we're in between the end of the regular season and bowl season hasn't even began yet for the SEC. Does not matter. There's still tons to discuss, tons to get into, and I cannot wait to talk about it all with each and every single one of you. So again, guys, thank you all so much. Your continued love and support. Like I mentioned, guys, we had a fantastic weekend. Had a great time away from the show. Obviously went out of town to be with family and all that good stuff and enjoyed our downtime. But again, guys, really, really excited to be back here with you all talking all things Gamecocks, SEC, everything in between. I see Madison Duncan in here. What's going on? Thank you all so much. Yep, Brian Dean, we will talk about that later in the show. Of course, Juice Wells is now officially an Ole Miss Rebel. Again, we'll talk about that along with what Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss are doing in the transfer portal. October the 5th, as Travi points out, is going to be crazy. That is when Ole Miss will officially visit South Carolina, and Juice Wells will make his return to Williams-Brice Stadium. That will be a wild environment, an electric environment, no doubt, and I cannot wait to see what takes place with that. Again, guys, also SEC basketball is taking place, and I feel like it's crazy to think how basketball is just sort of a footnote right now. Not a lot of people are all that interested or excited in it. There's some really good action, though, taking place. And, of course, guys, we dropped our power rankings this morning for the SEC. South Carolina with I would say closer than expected, but a quality win over the weekend, right? Beat Charleston Southern, ho-hum, what have you. South Carolina guys, I think we'd all agree if they finish anything less than undefeated for the rest of the month. If they don't go into SEC play 12-1, I think it would be justified to be disappointed. Obviously, you don't want to lose any of those easy non-conference games, quote unquote easy, but they should be easy non-conference games and should be easy wins for South Carolina. So, again, college basketball happening right now. Kentucky got a big win over North Carolina. Some other games taking place over the weekend that were really fun games to watch. So, anyways, guys, there's a lot going on right now in the world of sports. Also, by the way, for all you NFL fans out there, playoffs are upcoming. So, going to be a lot of fun, guys. And bowl season has officially begun. For those who are interested today, guys, the famous Toastery Bowl is taking place today in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I think that's a 2:30 kickoff, by the way, a little bit middle of the day kick. So if you're in the office, you're on the job, you want a distraction. I don't even know who's playing in the game, but does it matter? Does it matter? It's a bowl game. It's a bowl game. Some of you in CLT might be going. Who knows? Either way. Again, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. Like I mentioned, normally he joins us every single Thursday, but we're shaking some things up this week with, of course, the Christmas holiday upcoming in a week. 1 week till Christmas, by the way, which reminds me, later in the week, stick around, some fun content, what each SEC team I think should be asking Santa Claus for Christmas this year. That's always fun yearly content we do. Either way, guys, it's always fun weekly content when we have him on the airwaves. He's one of the best in the business, our good friend, Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate. Offsides of Marc Ryan airs every single day, 3 to 7. Marc, what's going on, my man? Appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, man. Happy holidays, you and your awesome audience, man. It's great to be with you, man. Family coming to town in a couple of days. Looking forward to it, man. Looking forward to it. It's been fast and furious last few months, and gonna have some good time off with the fan, man. So our job as professionals now, Chris, it's like I am doing. I'm really kind of unplugging here in a minute, right? But our job is, I got shows today and tomorrow, right? I got shows today and tomorrow. You have shows this week. How can we stay focused on our jobs when we're really looking forward to that chance to just disconnect, right? So that's the challenge for ourselves, right? Like we've all been in 10th, 11th, 12th grade and like checked out of what's going on in class. Now we're professionals. We got to make sure we deliver some of our best shows over the next couple of days, even though we're really looking forward to all the goodies that Mom is bringing to town,
So, Marc, with that being said, I'll start you off with a zinger. I mentioned today, this afternoon, the famous Toastery Bowl will be taking place, which I don't know if you've ever had the famous Toastery. I lived in Charlotte for 4 years. Very, very good spot. But if you could name a bowl game, right, because we've got crazy bowl game names. If you could name a bowl game, is there anything in particular? What name would you give, like the Marc Ryan Bowl? What would be the nickname for that bowl game?
I got a couple that I really like, Chris, actually. It would be the hardest bowl to wash in your sink is the crusted over cornflakes bowl. Have you ever had a bowl where you had to wash out crusted over cornflakes that were like attached to the side of the bowl, like a mussel is attached to a rock on the ocean? Those things don't come off, man. So I've always been a fan of the crusted over cornflakes bowl. As a Gator or a Gamecock fan, I'm sure we would accept a bid to that bowl right now. And also the Scrubbing Bubbles toilet bowl, Chris. Those are my two favorite bowl games. I can't tell you who's playing in this famous Amos Toaster Strudel Bowl that you're talking about. Who's playing today? I have no idea.
Honestly, I'd have to look it up. I literally we're going to find this out. I can't continue through the show without knowing.
By the way, what's
who's
up, Madison?
Playing in the game.
Good to see you, buddy. Appreciate the hello, and want to wish all of the Daily Crow listeners, man, a Merry Christmas and a really happy holiday. Whether you guys love us or hate us, you're here and you're tuned in, right? And the listeners have a right to vent. So regardless of your feelings for us, I appreciate you tuning in, right? to this show, to Offsides. And, the like or hate part doesn't matter so much as it does that you're tuned in. And we value and appreciate that more than you'd ever know. So thank you.
So for you and the audience, Mark, I doubt anybody would have been able to get this unless they looked it up. Old Dominion takes on Western Kentucky in the famous Toastery Bowl. So, hey, listen, it's football, hey, right? We're sitting here in the middle of July. We'll wish we had Old Dominion and Western Kentucky to pop on the TV in the afternoon and have that kind of on in the background, if you will. Mark, let's get into everything, man. Again, it's you think to yourself, okay, it's middle of December, things have slowed down, we're kind of nestling up to the fire, nothing's going. No. The craziness and the madness, I would almost argue, Mark, we're more busy right now and there's more things happening darn near than in season with this world of free agency that we've built in college football. Let's first, Mark, keep it in the Palmetto State, though. Gamecocks, I think what's interesting, Gamecocks with 9 commitments in the transfer portal or through the portal, they rank 6th overall right now. Clemson with 0. What do you make of that? What do you make of, because we had seen Clemson offering some guys in the portal, and so you're thinking to yourself, okay, maybe Dabo's turned a new leaf. He's going to start embracing the portal. Your thoughts on who the Gamecocks have picked up and what Clemson's not doing in the transfer portal, how you think that could affect the rivalry in the two programs and as they go on their respective paths, if you will.
So my heart, Chris, absolutely loves what Dabo is doing, right? Like, he is digging his heels in and saying, this is not the college football that I know. Cliff Ellis, head basketball coach at Coastal Carolina, just retired. We played his clip on CBS Sports Radio this weekend. Why? He said, I don't recognize this game anymore. There's no way to build continuity in college basketball. This is not the game that I know. He's telling you, he's throwing that cautionary bow out there about how awful this is. My heart loves what Dabo is doing. My head says that if you have designs on winning a national championship and you don't use the transfer portal, you better have a class in the top 5. And Clemson does not. If you don't have a class in the top 5, I think you've got to use it to supplement your roster. Now, I was reading the other day, because it's one of my favorite pieces every year, Chris, the Bud Elliott Blue Chip Ratio article. I read that every so often. And he says, what you see in terms of teams with heavy use of the portal is one of 2 scenarios. You see a brand new coach looking to jumpstart his new team, or you see a coach in trouble trying to save his job. Which of those 2 categories is Shane Beamer in?
I would say he's trying to save his job right now with a good season in 2024.
Okay. So he's like, those are Bud Elliott's words, right? Those are Bud Elliott's words, is that, you're seeing coaches use it as a jumpstart or to save their jobs. I'm more in line with you that he's feeling the pressure. I differ from you a little bit, Chris, in that I think he could lose his job, perhaps even should lose his job, if there's another losing record there. If this season produces another losing record, especially when you consider that there's 4 baked-in wins to the 2020. So how many games do you need to win? 2 games all year, because you have 4 wins already on the tally. Okay, you got to win 2 games all year. So with that being said, with the model that is in place, and as much as I don't like the let's go to the highest bidder, Chris, you can't identify for me how South Carolina to Arkansas is a step up for Rocket. It's a step up in the account balance, right? But I'm not sure, like, do they have better run blocking than Arkansas? No, they don't. What was lacking for Rocket Sanders in Arkansas? Does he ever say that? When is the press conference where he states what was lacking at Arkansas? What was lacking was the bank account at Arkansas. Okay. That said, that is the system. And South Carolina, that's the system at least right now. And South Carolina landed an impact player at a position of need. I would argue, Chris, that they may not have had RB1 or RB2 last season. Now they have RB1 and RB2. So has the team gotten better? Yes, the team has gotten better. And so I think Beamer's done a really, really nice job. I'm more fascinated, Chris, in seeing, does South Carolina beat Clemson in the actual high school recruiting rankings? Because the last time that happened was when? Anybody? Bueller? Fry?
I think I saw you post it was like 2013, maybe 2014?
Close. 12th.
12, okay.
2012.
Okay.
Per the 24/7 Sports Industry Composite Rankings, the last time the industry of recruiting rankings said that South Carolina had a better class than Clemson was 2012. So, is there any fish out there, Chris, that could push South Carolina over the top? Wouldn't that be a fascinating story? I mean, imagine if you're Beamer, what you could flex if you said, last year we beat Clemson. This year we beat them for the first time in a dozen years in recruiting rankings. That would be a hell of a flex, right, for Beamer and the Gamecocks. And they're this close to being able to do just that.
Yeah, I think even, Mark, to your point, even after losing the game at Williams-Brice Stadium, because of the way the game went, right, I think if you're able to win that recruiting battle, to your point, and finish ahead of the Tigers, that certainly would be another feather in your cap, and you could at least, I think, convince folks because of that, what you're doing in the portal. We're still trending in the right direction. We can still go up there to their place next year and beat them. You mentioned, Mark, I mean, why not? Let's go ahead and talk about it because it feels like this happened forever ago because everything that happened with the portal and what have you. But last Wednesday night, we got the SEC schedules. We already knew who everybody was playing, but we got the actual schedules themselves. It's one thing to know who you're playing, Mark, but it's another to see, oh, we got to go to Alabama and then to Oklahoma. It's like to see that on – and then, of course, I'm not getting any sympathy from you as a Gator man, but you've looked at that 2024 schedule and you have come to the conclusion that 5 and 7 or worse should get Shane Beamer canned. Is that correct?
100%. And that is not going to change, okay? You can't convince me, all right, that in year 4 – there's any excuse for having a losing record. Year 4. But what's the excuse for that? Like you can't convince me. Chris, I want us, when we solidify our decisions, and we may have already done that, I want us to stand by what we're saying. And that is, and you let me know if yours have changed. We've said 7-5 next year is a success. 6-6 is a disappointment. 5-7, and there's a new coach. Okay. And that means 7-5 and above is success. Now, I don't want to speak for you. I don't believe you said 5-7 and below is a new coach. You said 5-7 and below is failure. So that is the difference that we have. You can't tell me that I had a Gamecock fan last week, Chris, tell me 6-6 is success. Brother, 6-6 is 50%. What grade is that on your in 8th grade for you on a test? That's 50%. At best, you could say 6-6 in the SEC is a C. Again, man, I'll mention this to you, Chris. Like the expectations at South Carolina have been in the scrubbing bubbles toilet bowl for about the last 50 years. And the best way to elevate the program is to change that. I hear that when Gamecock fans lower expectations left and right. Gamecock football fans are the same thing as Clemson basketball fans. Brad Brownell has sucked for 13 years. He starts 9-0. Can't fire him. Oh, 9-0. Chris, if you had a 13-year relationship, girl treated you awfully for 13 years, treats you well for 2 months, that means you shouldn't get rid of her? I mean, how does that even make any sense? Have some damn pride in yourselves. Mm-hmm. Have some expectations. Chris, to your point, what I saw you tweet out, and incidentally, I'd love your opinion on this. I mean, you said thoughts to the audience, but I never heard your opinion. You said, would you take Juice Wells back? And Chris, just take an ice pick and jam it in my retina. I was looking at the responses, and most of these poor, sad, stepped-on Gamecock fans wrote in that comments, yeah, if he can help the team, we'll gladly have him back. If he can help the team, bro, he used you. He abused you. Some of you lost money on that guy that put money in the collective. You guys aren't attending South Carolina. You're attending What's the Matter You? What's the matter you? Come on, man. Have some pride. Have some standards. You know what you say to Juice Wells? The hell out of here. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord splits you. I'm out. Mic drop.
For what it's worth, Mark, I would not have taken him back. I thought it was
Thank
an
you.
interesting.
That's what I wanted to
I
see, Chris.
feel, yeah, I feel the same way about the Juice Wells thing, maybe even more strongly so than what I did or what I said last year about, because we were having a very similar conversation about Jaheim Bell when, those rumors started. And my take on it then, Jaheim Bell, one of his favorite slogans was, and I think still is, stand on business. And my take was, I think everybody should just stand on business. I think he should stand on business. I think South Carolina should stand on business, and they should wish each other well, or maybe not, and just keep it moving. And I thought this situation, to your point, Mark, was the exact same. I just think at some point you got to realize it's okay to expect more than the bare minimum. You know what I mean? And I think that yeah, I know it makes people uncomfortable, but in this world of NIL and portal, and like I'm seeing people on social media, maybe you disagree with me on this, but I'm seeing stuff like, we got people from On3 and 24/7 reporting when a guy or where a guy's going to school, and people are saying, "Oh, what about a kid's moment? How dare you steal the?" I'm like, that was gone when free agency was introduced. Like if a reporter gets a scoop, he's reporting it. It's a kid's moment be damned. Like, we are not in middle school anymore. This is not the soft, innocent college football you and I like. This is a business, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it's when a guy does what Juice Wells does, and I don't have any hate or animosity for Juice Wells in my heart by any means, but from a sports perspective and a business perspective, you keep it moving. And South Carolina, to your point, needs to have some dignity and keep it moving themselves too. Again, this is a bit of a moot point because he's now at Ole Miss, which perfect segue into it. We can talk about that. I mean, I think what Lane Kiffin, what Ole Miss are doing, again, you can feel as iffy as you want about the portal, but it feels like they're building a super team. This feels like Florida State all over again. What they did last year, adding all these pieces. I mean, it's wildly impressive. And then you get Juice Wells. So,
yeah, what are you getting with Juice Wells though?
Yeah,
are you getting? Or
good
what are you
point.
getting with Juice Wells?
But I don't. Do
Do
you think Lane Kiffin cares? Do you think Lane Kiffin cares?
Are you getting a guy making $800K that's going to stub his toe and then be out for the year? I mean, like, well, what are you getting? If he's cleared to play and he's not playing, and the people that put money in the South Carolina portal, did they get that back? Do you know? Do I know? Is Juice Wells just able to cash a check? Where is Shane Beamer coming out and saying all those people who put money into our collective and some of that money went to Juice Wells, you will get your money back? Because what happened last year was ridiculous. Chris, anything else you buy, the product doesn't come, the product comes defective, you get your money back. Name me a product where you don't get your money back. And if you don't get your money back, that company isn't in business very long. You got hard-working Gamecock fans putting money into a collective to see a guy play football who is cleared to play, who is not playing, and then pieces out. And then you have these poor Gamecock fans who have been abused their whole lives with a bad football product, bad leadership, saying, yeah, we take them back. I don't get it, man. Juice Wells would be nowhere close to my program. And I can tell you that, Chris, in the same breath say, wow, Lane Kiffin said, we need some more NIL if we're going to compete because we can't recruit the way that Alabama and Georgia can. We got to get all these guys on the secondary market. They've delivered on the secondary market, and now Ole Miss just might be a contender.
And to your point, Mark, the thing with NIL right now is nobody gets their money back. The approach is when that happens, you must give more to compete and get the next guy. And so, I mean, that's
forget the fact that you just wasted $50,000. So
right.
Forget that fact, right? God, gosh, man, that's incredible to me. What are the numbers you're hearing that Juice Wells made at South Carolina, Chris? I heard $800,000.
So from what I heard, Mark, and I mean, I've talked to people, and I'm sure you have as well around Gamecock football, but what I've actually heard, it was less than people realized. But it was still, six figures. I've heard 350K. So, not a million, not, high sixes, but still, I mean, a lot of money. Let's not pretend like that's not a significant amount of money for especially a guy to not play and then dip out. So I don't know what Ole Miss is giving him. I mean, from the Gamecock folks I've talked to, they don't feel like there's any way that he's going to be as well taken care of. But, should we also think about the football side of things where maybe Juice Wells didn't believe in Lenora Sellers throwing in the football and Jackson Dart is coming back and Lane Kiffin's your head coach and you're going to be in an elite offense. And I'm not justifying why Juice Wells made the right decision, because what he did, it was the right decision for him. But obviously, it's the way it happened is not commendable. But I'm just also giving all perspectives from this. So, in regards to why he may have left, but the situation's a complete mess, and unfortunately, I think for all the good that NIL has done for guys, that is a situation where it shows the dark side of it, where
Well, Chris,
players can take advantage of the system.
I don't mean to go all religious on you, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But even the Bible says your character is more important than your wealth, right? I would like to just send that message in a gift basket to Juice Wells. Your character is more important than your wealth. Would you say that's accurate to Juice Wells? I would not.
Mm-hmm.
And so, frankly, I think what he did is gross.
Mm-hmm.
And you couldn't be further away from that guy if you're a Gamecock fan. Not a single soul, not a single Gamecock fan should want that guy anywhere near the program. And when he comes to town, give him hell. Give him hell.
Marc, with National Signing Day upcoming Wednesday, you talked about recruiting rankings, the blue chip ratio, if you will. In your opinion, right? I don't know how big of a signing day guy you were. There's some people out there that really love it, right? Really get into recruiting and what National Signing Day is. With the portal and NIL, does it put a damper on it for you? Did you once look at National Signing Day as like this almost like national holiday, and now it's kind of like with the new age of football, it's not as big for a prospect to sign with your school? Do you still love it? Where do you stand on the National Signing Day that's upcoming on Wednesday?
Man, everyone's been like acting, and Clemson fans especially, like Florida's losing DJ Lagway, and there's been not a single shred of credible evidence to that, right? This seems to be the new signing day, Chris, and I still get into it, and I'll tell you why. All right. The blue chip ratio is the thing that I've kind of latched onto. 3 of the 4 teams in the college football playoff have met the blue chip ratio. The one that hasn't is Washington. Bud Elliott says in the blue chip ratio article, and for those of you listening and saying, what is the blue chip ratio? The last 20 national champions in college football have all had a blue chip ratio of 50% or better, meaning at least half of the players on the team or more were 4- and 5-star players coming out of high school. That's been true for the last 20 national champions. Now, Bud Elliott says, is this going to remain unbeaten? He said eventually he thinks a team in the 40 percentile, 40% of their guys are blue chip, will win when they have a superstar transfer portal quarterback. Well, Chris, look what we have this year. Washington, Michael Penix Jr. The blue chip ratio says they can't win it, right? Because the talent isn't there. Part of the reason Florida State was kept out is because the committee didn't feel like the talent on the roster was there. Florida State was short of the blue chip ratio. The blue chip ratio is the minimum requirement that you need to be a national championship contender in terms of talent. So Texas meets it. Alabama meets it. Michigan meets it. Washington does not meet it. But Michael Penix Jr. means that, brother, they got a shot for the first time. So, and Chris, the blue chip ratio does not incorporate the transfer portal. And yet, even in the transfer portal era, it's still accurate. It's still like, so to me, what it tells me is the transfer portal is a complement, right? It's a side dish. It's not the entree. Your high school recruiting needs to be the entree. And that to me, Chris, is what it should be. If you are living and dying in the transfer portal, as Bud Elliott says, you're probably a new coach with a garbage roster, or you're a coach trying to save his job. And I think for the transfer portal to remain a roster complement, right, not a roster entree, is the right use of the portal. And, well, Mark Ryan, that's not what Florida State did, and Florida State isn't where they want to be now, are they? They're not.
So
Nothing
how
beats
would you
recruiting.
how would you categorize Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels? I know that's a little bit different because they're still like top 20 nationally in recruiting. I think actually South Carolina is one spot ahead of Ole Miss in the SEC recruiting rankings, but Ole Miss still, it's not like they're putting together terrible recruiting classes. But I mean, how would you categorize them? Or do you feel like there's going to be one-offs every year to where maybe they're the exception to the rule that you just stated?
Um,
Because
so
it feels
I
like
think,
Ole Miss is looking at what they did this year. They're looking at their schedule next year and saying, okay, we can go out, get 10 game changers. We're a playoff team. It might be a flash in the pan 1 year, but that's all we got to do. We just got to get there 1 year with the right roster. And unfortunately for FSU, to your point, I mean, if they didn't have the quarterback injury, it may have worked out for them.
well, Chris, now that the playoff is 12 teams moving forward, why can't Ole Miss make it every year? And people say,
Yeah.
well, it's hard to get elite level athletes to come to Mississippi. Well, why? It's just
I
because of
mean,
a lack of
Kiffin's doing
history.
it. So Kiffin's
With
doing it.
right, right. So I mean, you get
Right.
kids to come to Louisiana
Mm.
that are top end athletes. Why can't you get top end athletes to come to Mississippi? What's really the difference in those states, right? Like what is really the difference? So my answer on Kiffin is he asked for more NIL money. He's gotten more NIL money. I don't like Chris enough about me to know that how you do things matters, and so Lane Kiffin is playing by the rules. He's tired of being at a disadvantage to the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world. I long for a day where there are guardrails for this stuff, and maybe the players are part of a revenue sharing plan as opposed to just everybody going to the highest bidder all the time. Maybe players are employees, but this is the system that we have right now. And whereas I don't love it, I can't argue with the fact that Ole Miss has dramatically improved its roster. And if you're looking at it outside looking in, man, they've got to be one of your 12 for the playoff next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like if you're picking the 12 playoff teams for next season, is Ole Miss not in that top 12? I think they most certainly are.
I think especially, Mark, they definitely are when you factor in the fact that I don't think he's announced officially, but I'm pretty sure Jackson Dart, their quarterback, is going to be back. Quinshon Judkins, good chance he's back. What they've added in the portal, what they're adding defensively, what Pete Golding was able to do in his first year as DC. Yeah, I think Ole Miss absolutely has got to be one of those teams you're looking at as one of your 12 for the playoff next year. Mark, there very well may be a good chance this is the last time we speak to you before the turn of the year, before the turn of the
Yeah.
calendar, if you will.
Yeah.
I want to run through these SEC bowl games and get your picks. Can we do that? Can we just
Oh,
off the cuff
absolutely.
first
And Chris,
reaction?
yeah.
I know there's a lot of games obviously, but if you're cool with that, can we? There's
Oh,
9 games.
absolutely. No,
Okay.
absolutely, brother. Absolutely. So we will absolutely look forward to being back on with you in 2024. It feels weird to say that, doesn't it? It feels
Mm-hmm.
weird to say, see you in 2024, see you next year. But that's where we're at, man. That's where it is. We've done it. We've made it to the end of another great year. So yeah, man, let's rock and roll.
All right, cool. We'll start, Mark, with the Texas Bowl, Oklahoma State and Texas A&M.
Oklahoma State has a consistent head coach, right? This game means something to them. A&M is in a period of transition. A&M has more roster talent, even with all their defections. But at the same time, I think Oklahoma State has more continuity. I like what they're playing for more. Give me the Cowboys.
How about the Gator Bowl, Mark? Kentucky and Clemson. Again, these are two teams that we saw at the end of the season face off against South Carolina. Thoughts on that game, Kentucky and Clemson?
I think Clemson got jobbed with the opponents. I mean, I felt like they deserve better, man. How about Clemson LSU? All defense versus all offense. I mean, these bowl matchups, Chris, are the cure for insomnia. We got bowl games going on, Chris. You don't even know you and I don't even know who's playing in the bowl games anymore. So I think Clemson wins pretty comfortably in this. The good thing about this one is Dabo does a great job of getting the kids ready to play. They always play like they're playing in the Super Bowl in these games. I think Mark Stoops and Kentucky are also motivated to go up against a brand name in Clemson. So I think this could be one of the better bowl games in terms of effort. I just think, Devin Leary, let's be honest, was a flop. Was he not? I mean, that was a total flop. This was a quarterback whose arm was good enough for the ACC, but not good enough for the SEC. And we saw it all bloody season. Clemson by double digits.
Clemson by double digits. Okay, let's move to the Cotton Bowl. Ohio State and Missouri. I think this has got the potential outside of the playoff to be maybe the best bowl game of bowl season. Buckeyes and Tigers. Who do you got?
I'm going Mizzou. I'm going Mizzou in this one.
A lot of opt-outs for Ohio State. A lot of their quarterback. A lot
Ton
of
of
opt-outs.
opt-outs.
Yeah.
Ton of opt-outs. And quarterback question in doubt. And the team that got jobbed, that in terms of motivation, it doesn't really play out that way. Man, we got screwed. We're going to come out with our hair on fire. That's not what we see historically in bowl history, Chris. We see the team that got jobbed look like they don't want to be there. Meanwhile, Missouri is very, very motivated. Ohio State has more talent, but I like Missouri in a close one. How about you? What do you think?
I'm picking Missouri as well. Again, I think one team in Ohio State would rather be anywhere else, and I think Missouri's fired up. I said this last week, Mark. If Ohio State wins or loses against Missouri, they're still Ohio State. What a win could do for the Missouri program, beating Ohio State, massive. And I think they're going to play with their hair on fire. I think Ohio State, again, that wasn't their goal. They don't want to be there. I think Mizzou's going to punch them in the mouth. So I've got the Tigers in that one as well.
Clemson, how about Kentucky? Who you got? Clemson, Kentucky.
I'm picking Clemson. I'm picking Clemson. Sure. To your point, I think Clemson's defense, I just think Devin Leary, I think it's going to be a sloppy game, slugfest kind of game. We saw these two offenses against South Carolina, right? I think Clemson, I don't know if double digits, but I do like Clemson in the game to win that one. Okay, the Peach Bowl, Ole Miss and Penn State. We were just talking about them. Ole Miss and Penn State. Who do you got? By the way, win for Ole Miss would be their 11th win, first time in school history if they do it.
Going Ole Miss. Going hotty toddy in this one, Chris. Absolutely. James Franklin to me is the coach who's always the bridesmaid, never the bride. This is unfortunately a bridesmaid bowl. Lane Kiffin, let's be honest, Chris, these are bridesmaid teams, right? That's why Kiffin is in the portal. And so this game determines which of these two programs is best equipped to leave that status behind, right? To find their forever. And I think Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss are closer. Give me the Rebels in this one.
I like the Rebels as well, Mark. That's a good pick. How about the Music City Bowl? This might be the one that is the biggest snoozer of all. The Auburn Tigers and the Maryland Terrapins.
The correct answer is the Who Gives a Bleep Bowl, Diesel. Chris. I just called you Diesel, my bad.
No,
who gives
good.
a bleep? I'll go Auburn. I like the end of season form, and I do think, whereas they weren't going to go to a great bowl game anyway, I do think they'll be pissed off that at the way that the Auburn game ended. SEC talent versus Big Ten talent. Give me Auburn in this one.
How about the Orange Bowl, Georgia and Florida State? This is a game that I think if played about a month ago would have been an all-time classic. Now, I'm not so sure what to expect from the Noles. Your thoughts on this one between the Dogs and the Seminoles?
Yeah, my thoughts are Georgia wins big, and that offers absolutely no evidence whatsoever for why Florida State should have been left out of the playoff. Mm-hmm. There are really lazy arguments out there. Oh, look, Georgia ran them. Looks like they didn't deserve. No. They deserve to be in the playoff based on what they achieved. Them being an underdog has no bearing on whether they deserve to be there or not. And what bothered me so much about what the committee decided was they decided that we think they're not the same team. They decided that was more important than evidence, which is their 13-0 body of work. And then the worst thing, Chris, is I keep getting told Florida State's strength of schedule was 55. What does that have to do with how good they are? Again, what could they have done about that? They play in the ACC. They scheduled LSU. They scheduled Florida. You're holding a schedule of 55 against them? What could they have done that they didn't do? And again, consistency is part of greatness, right? Alabama had crap games every month of the season. September to Texas, September to USF, October to Arkansas, beat them by 3. Arkansas won 1 SEC game. Please don't remind me who Arkansas beat. And then November against Auburn. Alabama had crap games every single month. How are they this great team? Consistency is a part of greatness, right? So there you go, man. I think Georgia wins that game big. I do.
How about LSU and Wisconsin and the ReliaQuest Bowl?
Why? Why is this the matchup? Why couldn't we ReliaQuest on something better than that? Chris, it's LSU big.
Hmm.
big in this game. I mean, who cares? Like this is a Big Ten afterthought. But I mean, would you agree? LSU big in this one?
Yeah, I think it depends on, does Jaden Daniels play? I don't
Yeah,
know that we really know that. So if
yeah.
if he does, if he does, I don't think Wisconsin has the horses even remotely to keep up in this one. How about the Citrus Bowl? You can't spell citrus without UT, right? Tennessee and Iowa. The over-under's 36.5, I think, if it's still that. I think the big question is, can Iowa even score double-digit points? I think Tennessee big in this one. Again, I know their defense is great, and Tennessee's not exactly world beaters, but how can you trust the Iowa offense, Mark, to do anything? So who do you like in the Citrus Bowl?
I like Tennessee. Tennessee. I strongly advise, Chris, you never to say to a woman, "You're the only 10 I see." Okay. But Tennessee, this is one of the more intriguing matchups. And the NFL never gives you a matchup like this.
Mhm.
Okay. All offense versus all defense. And we're getting that matchup. Tennessee just has too much firepower for Iowa, man. They just do. And whereas, I think it's really insulting to a Florida State to compare them to Iowa. Florida State has dudes. Iowa has a system.
Mhm.
I don't think that's going to be enough. I think, Tennessee is able to get to a first digit two and not just a safety, so a 2-digit number that starts with two. And Iowa's going to have a hard time getting to a 2-digit number, period. Right. So I do think Tennessee wins this game. And that's one of the ones I'm really looking forward to seeing, Chris. And yeah, I saw you drop in the old Spurrierism. You can't spell citrus without UT. You know, there's a lot of programs out there. You might know two of them who would love to be in the Citrus Bowl right now. You know,
Indeed, indeed. Mark, last one. The Alabama Crimson Tide taking on the Michigan Wolverines. This one, of course, the game we are all looking forward to. New Year's Day, 5 p.m. Eastern kickoff on ESPN. And again, the setting, Mark, couldn't be better out in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl. Your thoughts on this one? Who wins between the Crimson Tide and the Wolverines?
if you're a Michigan fan, you're nervous because you've seen the track record of Nick Saban with all this time to prepare, right? It never works well for the opposition. That said, Chris, I picked Michigan as my national champion when the year began. You don't stick with a bad pick if it's a bad pick, but I think it's a good pick. I've studied the national champions the last 10 years. And the last 10 years, Chris, the team that has won the national championship has been in the top 10 in either total offense or total defense. Michigan is number 2 in total defense. Um, Additionally, they're in the top third in total offense, which is the other requirement. You got to be top 10 in one, top third in the other. So right around 45 or 50. Michigan meets the criteria. So the other two schools that did were Georgia and Oregon, and they're both out. So I'm going to go with what history tells me. I'm going to go with what my preseason pick was, and I'm going to say Michigan finds a way to get it done. A team as inconsistent as Alabama, whose high, whose best is an A plus, capable of beating Georgia, and whose low is capable of struggling with Arkansas and USF. I don't think the lack of consistency beats Michigan. I also think, Chris, it's like nobody's mentioning that Alabama beat Georgia by 3 with its two best receivers hobbling throughout that whole
Mm.
game. You know, we just give Alabama credit being number one, whereas like when that game is played, Alabama Michigan, if the
Mm.
opponent was Georgia, I think you'd pick Georgia
Mm.
because now Lad McConkey isn't limping. Now Brock House isn't limping, right? And if they played that game again, and you said to me, Mark, the line is Georgia minus 6.5, I'd take Georgia and lay the points. And I would say, Georgia, man, I got a healthy receiving core and I have the revenge factor. Give me Georgia, right? So, I mean, Alabama had a perfect storm, a confluence of events going on. I'll take Michigan to win that game. How do you see it?
I hate to be the one to have the cop out answer of I haven't made my pick yet. I really haven't.
Oh, come on.
Mark,
Come
I
on.
just I don't know, man. Somebody once told me you don't get rich betting against Nick Saban, and I just think with a month to get ready, they are inconsistent. I guess the question is, do you bank on Nick Saban with extra time having Alabama ready to play at the best version of them we have seen versus the Jordan Hare having to survive via a miracle against a bad Auburn team version. So it's like, what version of Bama will you get? I got to roll with Bama, man. I got to roll with the Crimson Tide. I doubted Bama all year, man. I picked Bama to go 9-3. I picked Georgia in the SEC title. I have been burned by Bama so much this season. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down with the Crimson Tide this time, man. I can't do it again. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a classic, though. I think it's going to
be an
classic,
Alabama-Texas rematch for the national championship.
Which would be electric. And Mark, nobody would love that more than Greg Sankey over at the SEC office. Yeah. 2 SEC teams technically in the national title. Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate, Offside to Marc Ryan. I'll be jumping on your show later today, so we really are double dipping today. But Mark, if we don't speak to you again on these airways before the turn of the calendar, Merry Christmas to you first off, but Happy New Year. Appreciate everything you did for us in 2023, my friend. All the great memories, the segments, the value you provided our audience, and thank you so much for having me on. I value our relationship. I value our friendship. Truly means the world. And again, I think our audience would say the same. Although sometimes you get under their skin, I think they appreciate the fact that you challenge them, you provide different perspectives, you bring the heat, you bring the banter, and I can't say thank you enough, man. Truly, it's been a pleasure.
I want to wish Merry Christmas to most of your audience, Chris. Most of your audience, I send Merry Christmas.
What would you give the bottom 10%ers for Christmas, Mark? A lump of coal or something worse?
I'll see what I can think of. Buddy. No, man. I truly value the friendship and the relationship as well, man. And thank you very much for having me on all year long. It's a fun time. You know, guys, in this business, there's people who just vibe with an on-air capacity. And Chris and I just crack the mic and we just go. We just go. And I end up saying, man, like that was a really good subplot. Or I really like when the conversation went there. And I end up bringing that back to offsides as well. So doing this has become kind of show prep for my own show because I always end up incorporating some of the discussions into our show. So guys, Merry Christmas. And we'll see you on the Daily Crow in 2024. We'll see you next year.
Mark, I appreciate you, man. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care. Great stuff, guys, from our good friend Marc Ryan. Always a pleasure to chat with him. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, we're talking transfer portal, what South Carolina is doing in the portal, what Ole Miss has been doing, what other SEC teams are doing as well. Also, our good friend Neil Shulman of InAllKindsOfWeather.com. He will join us around the turn of the hour. Guys, we have got so much to get into. Also, guys, we're breaking down the Peach Bowl today. Content truly bleeding out of the eyeballs. Guys, all that and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home. Call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
That's your Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Monday, December the 18th, 2023. Again, guys, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Want to say thank you yet again to our good friend, Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate, for taking the time to chat. Really good stuff. And again, I think our last time, more than likely, that we'll have Marc on these airwaves until the turn of the calendar. Again, I'll let you guys know exactly what next week looks like. Of course, next Monday, a week from today, it is Christmas Day. So, of course, no live show then. Next week, it's really just going to depend, guys. I've got family in town that I obviously want to spend time with, but we're going to have some really, really big things happening with bowl season, also with some big, big announcements that you're going to want to stay tuned for. But I'll let you guys know. We'll cross that bridge when the time comes. Guys, that being said, we're going to get him on about 1 o'clock. He's going to join us right now. Though, again, guys, we've been going through each and every single SEC team, breaking down their 2023 season that was and talking about a bowl game if they had one upcoming. Our next guest, similar to South Carolina, is home for the holidays, and I know that he feels some type of way about it. So we're going to bring him on, my good friend Neil Shulman, in all kinds of weather.com, talk all things Florida Gators. Neil, what's going on, my man? I appreciate you taking the time.
Always appreciate coming on your show and talking Gators on non-Gator airwaves. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it's not fun not having a bowl game. It's not something that we're used to. And down in Gainesville, it's a little bit different, I guess, than it is in Columbia. I don't really mean that as a slight or a shot to you guys. It's just that, I mean, Florida is a program that's won 3 national titles in the last 25, 30 years. Expects to be in bowl games every year as an absolute minimum, and in most cases 8-4, 9-3 isn't really something to celebrate. It's, be in contention for national title or the season's a failure for most fans in most seasons. Obviously, things are going in such a way now in Gainesville that we have had to lower our expectations, and I'm sure that's kind of what we're gonna get into now.
Yeah, Neil, I want to start there since you bring it up. Like, how weird is it? Because I think you and I are around the same age. Like, how weird is it to see Florida football in the state that it's in? Because growing up, I mean, anybody who's a 90s baby or late 80s or whatever, like, all you know is dominance when it comes to Florida Gators football. My first memories are, of course, Chris Leak and Ron Zook. And I think even some Gator fans would label those as dark days right after Spurrier. But then in comes Urban Meyer. You win the national championship. And I mean, it's off and running yet again. So you had the 90s with Spurrier. Then you had Urban Meyer. Like, again, all we knew was Florida Gators football being dominant. Now we're talking about getting to a bowl game. Like how weird is that? How much of an adjustment is that for you in Gator Nation to, like, even be having these conversations?
Very strange. Very, very, very strange. I mean, I guess the first part of it is that the decline, I guess, it both happened fast and it both happened gradually at the same time. Like, because from 2009 to 2010, all right, there's the big drop off. You're 13-1. You're just coming off that loss to Alabama in the SEC title game, and then the next year 8-5, and then you go to Muschamp, and then within a couple of years you're 4-8, and you're like, well, 5 years ago we won the national title, and now we lose twice as many games as we win in the course of 1 year. So in that sense, the decline happened almost overnight, but it was sporadic in another way too, in that, like, there were at least elements of championship level football that Muschamp brought. Like, he could recruit defensive players at a level that I don't think anyone else could top. Like, his defensive recruiting was on par with that of a championship caliber program. So we were still churning out top NFL draft picks. Like, Dante Fowler was the first top 5 NFL draft pick. So, like, all right, you still have some elements there. Maybe the next guy can come in and, I don't know, win with it, because he took over a team that had a lot of talent left over from the Muschamp recruiting classes. And, he did kind of. McElwain won the SEC East, which we now saw was just a mirage because the East was so bad. Georgia wasn't what they are now, and Tennessee wasn't really a factor. And South Carolina I guess at that point was just coming off the Spurrier heyday, so they weren't really much of a factor either. So it was more him just taking advantage of a bad division. But we were, as Gator fans, kind of thinking, all right, well, it's not great, but okay, we're still winning the East. We're still getting to Atlanta. That is the goal, so we can't be too upset about it. But then it's just completely craters. There are culture issues with McElwain. The strength and conditioning program is so bad that players themselves didn't even trust the strength coaches to do their jobs. And this is before the days of NIL, by the way. They would go out and they would pay out of their own pockets local strength people, like local strength coaches, to help get them more ready for football, which is unheard of nowadays. And from there, you have a credit card fiasco where you have guys suspended for credit card fraud. Honestly, just a couple of guys making some bad choices and then kind of just trickling down from there. Another younger freshmen and I guess transfers who are new to the program, just trying to make a good name for themselves and be a team player and all that and ingratiate themselves to their teammates, whatever. Bad culture permeates the whole roster. Then Mullen comes in, he fixes it, at least on the surface. That issue taken care of, but then he burns out. And now there's another culture problem, only this time it stems from the fact that the coaching staff isn't really 10 toes in on the development of the players and getting the results that they're supposed to. Dan Mullen, the best way to illustrate this is that Dan Mullen signed himself to a contract extension in 2021 after the Cotton Bowl loss, where Florida got obliterated by your now former quarterback, Spencer Rattler, 55-20. And he extended his own contract, didn't do a damn thing to extend any of his assistant coaches' contracts. And that sent a message because everyone knows, all right, if you're extending your own contract, you're getting yourself a little bit more money. You do nothing to help any of your assistants. You're clearly not in it for the long haul. And then there's other rumors, like Adam Schefter put out a statement like Dan Mullen is open to going to the coach. Dan Mullen at Florida is open to coaching in the pro ranks. And there's just clue after clue and hint after hint. All right, this is fundamentally broken. Napier comes in. I think he's done some things to fix that. There's the story that came out right away when he gets to Gainesville. He fixes the parking situation for the players, which if you've ever been to Gainesville, is a terrible situation. Fixes the food situation. The players have been complaining that the quality of the food wasn't great. So he's done some things there, and he has recruited to a degree that I think Gator fans are expecting and hoping for. But with all those other issues now on top of them, now you've got NIL and the transfer portal, and Napier hasn't quite adjusted, I don't think, to it. And then there's lastly the fact that he didn't make a pair of moves after the 22 season that I really thought he was going to make, and I thought he really should have made. That was hire an offensive coordinator to help remove one of the many hats that he wears on game days, and didn't do that. And then hire a special teams coach. Because Chris, I'm sure you remember this, Florida hammered South Carolina in 2022. And despite that, Florida could not possibly have played a worse game on special teams. They did everything wrong you could have possibly done. Xavier Henderson fumbles a punt. We have one field goal blocked. We have another field goal where we can't even put the ball down for the kicker. Big punt touchdown. After a timeout, we give up a 40-yard punt return to Josh Van, and then we give him a nice face mask at the end of it, all in the span of one game. And the next week we lose to Vanderbilt because Jason Marshall tried to catch a punt in his own end zone and didn't do it. So it's every single one of those pieces all coming together. Now, all the failures from the Muschamp, the McElwain, and then at the end of the Mullen tenure, now on to the Napier issues that he has added on to the pile that we're dealing with. So now when you look at all that, it's I'm not surprised.
So looking back, Neil, specifically at the 2023 season, it really feels like it was a tale of almost two halves of this season. Obviously, Florida had a tough one opening up at Utah, lose that one 24-11. And by the way, going in, right, the expectations were low, at least from the outside looking in. Maybe in Gainesville, not so much, but the Vegas over-under was 5 or 5.5, and a lot of folks were picking Florida to miss a bowl game. Some people even projected that maybe Billy Napier would get fired, which I think most of us with level heads realized that was probably never going to happen when you factored in the $30+ million buyout. Either way, though, there was some optimism, right? You bring in a new quarterback, and I thought Graham Mertz was much, much better than most folks expected, most notably me, who had him ranked 14th in the SEC quarterback rankings, which I'd ate crow, as I should have. But either way, Florida, first half of the season, you beat Tennessee. I know you had that ugly loss at Kentucky, but I thought you got that back with the win at South Carolina. Florida sitting 5-2, right? I mean, it looked really promising that the Gators would make a bowl game, but then the stretch of Georgia, Arkansas, LSU, Mizzou, and Florida State. Florida loses all 5 of those games. And of course, Neil, I'm sure the Arkansas game is the one at home that stands out with the all-black uniforms, 39-36. Special teams played a role in that one yet again. You also lose 33-31 at Mizzou. Just talk about the season as a whole. I mean, again, it looked like Florida was in prime position to at least get to a bowl game and have something to feel good about right now. How disappointing was that final stretch of 5 games? And I feel like it had to be accentuated by that loss to Arkansas, which really was the exclamation point, if you will, on a bad year.
Well, the warning signs were there. The warning signs from early in the year were there. The fact that we didn't just lose to Kentucky, we got embarrassed by Kentucky, who does not recruit from the same pool of talent that Florida recruits from. They don't just win because, I don't know, there's a bad call or a field goal doinks off the upright and goes in, or some kind of luck where there's a long bomb and the guy catches it with his toe tapping down just inside the white line. No, they just came and they ate our lunch for 60 minutes. And Ray Davis goes for almost 300 yards because we can't control the line of scrimmage or even begin to understand gap control. So that was frightening. And the game most people are going to forget was Charlotte. And I understand that the defense was actually fairly good in that game. They only gave up 7 points, but there were some plays, even still. I know they won 22-7, so everyone's going to go, well, the offense didn't do its job. The offense couldn't score in the red zone. But there were plays where they let Jalen Jones escape the pocket. They let him get outside. There were missed tackles. There were plays where our defensive linemen just got slung down like Barbie dolls. And you look at that and you go, well, okay, that's Charlotte. Now, what's the SEC going to do to us? So, yeah, we got up for Tennessee and we beat them. We should have. That's a rivalry game. I'm sure our players were sick and tired of hearing about how we never beat rivals under Napier. Under the lights in the swamp, a night game. Yeah, that's great. But you can't keep that up. And that shows that it's just, honestly, it's fake juice. It's not who you are. It doesn't show a real process that fans can objectively believe in. It shows that you can objectively get up and give a good team a fight. But then right when the level of competition drops, your level of play will also drop. And that's where I said, okay, Florida's either going to figure this out or they're going to lose to a team they shouldn't after that Charlotte game. Well, I thought it would be Vanderbilt, but it turned out to be Arkansas. So I was wrong and I was right at the same time. But there's no way to defend it. You can't lose to an Arkansas team that's 4-8 on your home field. It's unacceptable. It's inexcusable. And of course, what was the catalyst for the loss? Special teams, which we just talked about a minute ago. Well, maybe if you'd hired a real special teams coach and didn't have a quality control assistant, basically an intern handling those duties, you wouldn't have had a situation where in a 2-minute drill, a Chinese fire drill, if you will, you're trying to get to the line of scrimmage and spike the ball after a first down that you are now in field goal range, spike the ball and run your field goal team on. Well, our field goal team runs on as the offense is lining up to try to spike the ball. That, as has been part of a theme for the Florida Gators this year, is more than 11 players. That is an obvious substitution penalty. 5 yards back, Trace Mack's field goal now misses just to the right, and had it been 5 yards closer, that ball is going in. Didn't happen that way. So, again, you look at these avoidable mistakes that you could have prevented in the offseason. And a lot of Gator fans, I'm sure, are going to talk about the 4th and 17 at Missouri, about LSU putting 700 yards of offense on us, which is insane. Like with the new clock rules in place now, where you get like 2 or 3 fewer possessions a game, 700 yards is bad for 2 games. But that's beside the point. The play calling, which also cost us against FSU, and the special teams fiascos that let us down against Arkansas and Utah in the first game of the season are things that I look at and I go, okay, Billy Napier, had he been proactive, would have caught these things ahead of time. He would have addressed them before they came back to bite us in a second year. He didn't do it. And that's where the cause for concern is. I would say the frustration is just the fact that we lost those games, but we can move on and go, okay, 2024, big recruiting class coming in. We got Lagway, even though he won't play as a freshman. But we have this talent coming back. We should be good for the most part. But that's the concern moving forward. It's not a matter of let's just beat the dead horse. Yeah, we lost 5 games in a row, which never happened. I'm genuinely concerned about the future now.
Speaking of the future, Neil, we'll get in the 2024 schedule in a second, but what is Napier doing when it comes to special teams coordinator, offensive coordinator? Are those moves being made? I mean, are they what's the latest in regards to what Billy Napier is doing behind the scenes?
Yeah, that's the problem. He doesn't have any moves right there, or at least announced. That he does work in silence to some degree. There is something to be said for that. I will say that I like it that he doesn't let a lot of things slip out. I think that there is some positive to that. But on the other hand, it's also now 2 days before National Signing Day, and you still have those 2 offensive line coaches who, if we're just being honest, did not do a good job this past season. And the fact that we have 2 offensive line coaches means that we don't have room for a special teams coordinator. So it's a catch-22. Like which piece of the puzzle do you want to plug in here? Like, do you want a special teams coordinator, or do you want to have 2 offensive line coaches? Because there are only so many spots, obviously, that you can have for paid assistant coaches on your staff. And maybe he's doing something in the background behind all of our backs, but as of right now, there's no smoke about that.
In regards to the transfer portal, how do you feel like Billy Napier is handling that? I know the big one obviously was Trevor Etienne. That kind of set Gator Nation off. I feel like we even talked about Florida last week on the show because I felt like I could not get on social media, X specifically, without seeing people and yourself obviously posting about Florida and Napier. And it just felt like last week shit hit the fan. Of course, then the rumors come up he might go to Georgia, which makes it even worse. A couple of big portal commitments over the last couple of days. I saw you guys got a defensive back from Oregon State, defensive lineman from Pitt. What's the mood and the feeling and the vibe right now on what Billy Napier is doing in the transfer portal?
Yeah, so we have Wright State, wrong program, Penn, Ivy League, Joey Slackman. Fun fact, actually, my dad went to Penn, and I mean, I used to live in New Jersey before I moved down to Charleston. So I went to a couple of Penn games, and I saw him play a couple years ago before I even had any idea that he was going to come to Florida. I just wanted to see Penn play. And my impression of him in that game 2 years ago, actually there were 2. There was one at Columbia, and there was one where they were home against Dartmouth. And my impression of him in those games was he looks better than the average athlete around him on the field. I don't know that he's going to be an NFL player, but he definitely looks like he could be, I don't know. He looks like he could play for a Power 5 program. And this was as a sophomore before he really took off this past year. Now, watching the film that he's put out as a junior, he had a breakout year at Penn this past year in 2023. And I think that Gator fans have every reason to be excited about him. There's going to be some eye rolling. Well, you took a guy from the FCS, a guy from the Ivy League. They don't even have scholarships. But I think that he's a guy that's going to come in and work and work and work. And he'll just be that guy that goes through a wall for you. And I think Florida really needs that. So that one is good. Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon from San Diego State, a good piece at the offensive line. It's not going to be like adding an Osiris Torrance like we did a couple years ago, obviously for many reasons, not the least of which is that he is not going to be a first-round draft pick, but he is a respectable piece on the offensive line. He's proven that at his position at San Diego State. And I think the difference here between him and a guy like a Damian George we brought in this past year was that we're bringing him in to fill the same position on the offensive line. At least I believe that's what's going to happen. I don't know. Maybe Napier will change his mind on that, but that's what it seems like it's going to be. That he'll come in and play on the offensive line where he played at San Diego State, whereas Damian George had to kind of shift positions from guard to tackle, and he's not really mobile enough to be able to do that. He couldn't do it. He couldn't handle it at an offensive tackle in the SEC, whereas guard, you don't have to move around as much or be as quick on your feet. So I think keeping that natural position more might help him, and letting George play more inside could help there. So then you get kind of 2 additions by 1. And I mean, now we have Bridges from Oregon. That's a good corner who can come up and make tackles, both in the run game and knock away passes when the ball's in the air. He's got good ball instincts there. I like that pickup too. I think the problem is that Napier and Florida kind of spent 3 weeks just stuck in park, like fiddling around with a gear stick, and then finally figuring out, oh, this is drive, and then slamming on the accelerator. Now they're going 180 miles an hour. But there's still like there were still misses that Florida had in the transfer portal. And I think Gator fans have every right to be frustrated about them. I think it's a difficult game to play too, because you don't know who is going to be entering the portal later. So I understand that aspect of wanting to be patient and waiting. But again, because Florida at this point now with Bridges, they're still at a delta of -14 in the transfer portal. And everyone's going to be at a net of below zero now because everyone's entering the portal. Not everyone's found new homes yet. But to be in the minus teens in it's late mid-late December now isn't really great. And you're going to be relying on a lot of guys entering the portal coming to you. And if you don't hit on them, then you wind up having to fill your roster with backup spots or with backup options. And that is where we have problems like we saw, without naming names. We saw game tape this year. There were some plays against Missouri where there were guys who, frankly, probably don't belong on an SEC field. If we're just keeping it as respectful and polite as possible, I think the objective way to say it is there were just a lot better players out there we could have had than the guys that we did. Those guys hurt us by not making plays. So that's what's going to keep happening if you rely on the portal and you keep missing. Like Napier's backed himself into a corner here. Like, yeah, sure, he could right the ship now. He could hit on the later portal guys, but you better, because if you don't, you have no recourse.
So, Neil, that brings me to the 2024 schedule, and it's interesting because Billy Napier enters what feels like a must-win type of year, a year where his seat is scorching hot, at least in Gainesville, year 3 of his tenure, and the 2024 schedule, I mean, it's safe to say it's a murderer's row. Again, that's not going to be an excuse, but it is. 11 Power 5 opponents. You've got the one non-con game against Samford. Outside of that, you've got Miami, UCF, and Florida State. And then you've got an SEC schedule which features Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, at Texas, LSU, and Ole Miss. What is the minimum expectation for 2024 for Billy Napier, for the Billy Napier era to continue? Is it getting to a bowl game? Is it 7-5? Is it more than that? And in your mind, way too early, do you think Billy Napier can meet those expectations? Because, again, even if you had a really, 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 really good team and you were a really, really good coach, having a good season with that schedule would be a tough ask. Like, it almost feels like we're putting Billy Napier in a position to where he's almost set up for failure. Is that too much? I don't know. But in your mind, your opinion, what does he have to do in 2024 to come back?
I think the first thing he has to do is beat the teams he's supposed to beat. I think the conversation around him right now is very, very different. If in year 1 he's 8-4 as opposed to 6-6, and in year 2 he's 7-5 as opposed to 5-7. In year 1, there's no excuse to lose to that Kentucky team. Unacceptable to lose to that Kentucky team in the swamp, and then to lose to Vanderbilt. No, can't have it. Unacceptable. Period. Point blank. End of conversation. Can't have that. So that would change that conversation, because then you can say, well, all right, 8-4, that's an improvement over 6-6. You beat the teams you were supposed to beat. The talent isn't that great because everyone that's been the blanket excuse from Gator fans who have unlimited patience for Billy Napier that, well, Dan Mullen left him with no talent. To a degree, that's true. He did leave you with a top 5 NFL draft pick at quarterback, but for the most part, fair enough. But he didn't leave you with so little talent that you should have gone 6-6. Nor did he leave you with so little talent that in his second year, he should have gone 5-7. There was no excuse to lose to Arkansas. There was no excuse to get destroyed by Kentucky. On the road, weird things can happen. Again, if you lose that game late on a field goal, I can tolerate it. I'm not happy, but I can live with it. And I know Missouri's in the New Year's Six, but you shouldn't have lost that game. You were with your backup quarterback late in the game, had a chance to win. Had you converted a 4th and 17, you win that game. So even if you just flip the Missouri of 23, the Arkansas game of 23, you let the Kentucky loss this past year stand, and then you flip the Kentucky and the Vanderbilt results in his first year, it's all drastically different. But that's not the situation we're in. Instead, we're looking at a coach who's 11-14 right now. And if you say that he's going to go 6-6 and keep his job, I just don't see that. I don't know why you would look at a coach who A, doesn't get any better from the point at which his predecessor left him, which was 6-6. B, regresses from year 1 to year 2. I mean, most coaches who are going to succeed have a jump in year 1 to year 2. He got worse. And he got lucky. That South Carolina game, I mean, because Ricky Pearsall and Trey Wilson teamed up for the Immaculate Reception Part 2, did you survive that? So, like, the luck and the close game thing goes the other way there. But then again, 3, you show no progress when you do have your guys in there. The whole thing being Napier doesn't have talent. Mullen left him in a bad spot. Well, if in his 3rd year, he's still not doing any better than Dan Mullen, there's no way you can blame Mullen for this anymore, because it would be almost, if not entirely, all Napier guys. And I think it will be, because I guess with the exception of, I mean, Florida's probably going to get Michael Tarquin back. So say the pundits, who was an offensive lineman from the Mullen tenure, who played in 2022. So I guess that's a Mullen piece, but the overwhelming majority of the players in 24 are going to be Napier's guys. So 6-6 to me is unacceptable. 7-5, I think it becomes a conversation. Like, how bad were the losses? Were you competitive? Did you beat yourself? Could you count to 11? Did you have 2 guys with the same jersey number run on the field at once? That's where it's like up for debate. And if the losses are at least in the ballpark, like if you play Georgia to like a 38-24 type loss, all right, fine. But you can't lose 41-3 to them. Same with at Texas. Play that game competitively. And you don't lose the teams that you're supposed to beat. 8-4 better, I think he's safe. Conversation's done. There's no talk about firing him at that point.
Neil, last thing before we get you out of here, man. It's been an electric conversation. To the hardwood, what's the outlook for Gators men's basketball this year?
Optimistic, for sure optimistic. I think that there is reason to be optimistic. We did land a nice transfer portal class there. I don't know exactly what this team is capable of, because I don't think they played enough games to be able to judge them by that. But I mean, Tyree Samuel is a guy that kind of saved us against ECU. So that was a nice pickup there. I mean, he can clean up some boards and put the ball back in nice and easy. Oh, your offensive possession doesn't work? Well, there's 2 points because you have a big guy now. That's cool. Walter Clayton's a guy that can finish. He can score from the outside too. I just like his overall game. I worry, though, that, again, there's going to be the same problem as I just talked about with the football team, where the level of play kind of rises and dips based on the level of opponent that you play. Because Virginia is a respectable team. There's no one upset about that loss. And you got up for FSU, you pounded their faces, and you conquered them. You cut the heads off, whatever. Fine, great, rivalry game. Well, then you play against ECU, and that's a team that's, as of that game, was 265 in the net. Lost to SC Upstate. And you need Samuel to clean up a miss to survive that one. I don't know. We're going to have to see if this team can up its level of play on a consistent basis. But I think if they do, I think if Walter Clayton continues taking strides, I think if Riley Kugel steps up into an even bigger role this year, I think Florida will be a tournament team. But again, they're going to have to avoid those bad losses, because I mean, last year they got swept by Vandy. Like, that can't happen if you're going to be a tournament team. It's just a matter of what's the consistent level of product you put on the floor. Are you going to be able to get up for big opponents and beat them like we did last year against Tennessee and FSU, but then not be able to cut it against teams like Vanderbilt because you let your guard down? But I don't know. TBD, up in the air. Ask me again in like a month, and then we can have a more fair conversation about that.
And we will definitely plan on doing that. Excuse me. Neil Shulman, in all kinds of weather.com. Neil, one of the best in the business when it comes to talking all things Florida Gators. Neil, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to you and yours, my friend. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, and let's definitely do it again soon.
Yes, sir. You as well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. You're the man, Neil. I appreciate it.
You got
Great
it.
stuff, guys. Neil Shulman, in all kinds of weather.com, breaking down all things Florida Gators in the 2023 season, even some hardwood there at the end, and some interesting times in Gainesville right now. Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into a quick break on the other side. We are going to get into everything that has taken place with the transfer portal over the last couple of days, including some big pickups by South Carolina, what Lane Kiffin is doing, all that and more, guys, on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie Ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Monday, December the 18th, 2023. Again, thank you all so much for tuning in. I want to say thank you so much to our good friend, Neil Shulman of InAllKindsOfWeather.com, taking the time to talk all things Florida Gators. The 2023 season that was, what went wrong for Billy Napier in year 2 of his tenure, and what they've got to do, what he's got to do to retain his job moving forward past 2024. I see John Edward, who's been very active in the chat today, asking when's the next JC Sherbert segment. Tomorrow, we will have JC Sherbert on the show to talk all things National Signing Day, get a little signing day primer, if you will. I think JC will have us some great intel in regards to National Signing Day and who you can expect South Carolina and others to sign as well. So again, that segment will take place tomorrow. But again, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. Like I said, got a lot to discuss. We may go past 2 o'clock today, just to let you all know. There is so much going on. There are so many topics of conversation to dive into. So may go a little past 2 o'clock. So there's your little surprise for you. There's a bonus. There's an early Christmas present for you, if you will. Again, guys, we are exactly 1 week away from Christmas. And just stay tuned, guys, for later in the week. I'll have a better idea in exactly what we're doing in regards to the schedule next week, right? Christmas holiday being on Monday. Good chance I'm out of town spending time with family. But the SEC bowl season does get rolling on Tuesday. Very, very excited for that. And again, we'll let you know exactly what the schedule is next week. But again, with that being said, the madness from the transfer portal continues. Let's first look, guys, at the top 10 rankings in the transfer portal entering today. At number 1, we got the Ole Miss Rebels with 9 commitments. More on them in just a second and what Lane Kiffin is doing in the portal. At number 2, the Colorado Buffaloes with 15 commitments. At number 3, the Louisville Cardinals with 13 commitments. At number 4, the Arizona State Sun Devils with 13 commitments. At number 5, the TCU Horned Frogs with 8 commitments. At number 6, the South Carolina Gamecocks with 9 commitments. At number 7, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish with 6 commitments. At number 8, the Texas Tech Red Raiders with 9 commitments. At number 9, the Kentucky Wildcats with 5 commitments. And at number 10, the Wisconsin Badgers with 6 commitments. Again, guys, that's the top 10 for the transfer portal rankings, the team rankings as of today. That is per our friends over at 24/7 Sports. And we're going to focus right now specifically on South Carolina, what Shane Beamer is doing in the transfer portal, because, of course, guys, a lot of action taking place over the weekend, not just in Columbia, but across the SEC. More on that in just a second. But you look at some of these latest additions. You start with, and again, guys, this goes back to the middle of last week because, of course, we did not have a show on Thursday or Friday to react to these things live or discuss or break down or what have you. So, of course, we talked about Rocket Sanders, the running back coming over from Arkansas to South Carolina, what he brings to the Gamecocks running back room, and obviously the impact that he makes. I would still say, guys, sitting here today, that is the biggest portal addition for South Carolina to this point in the cycle. But you also added late last week, guys, Jaden McGowan, the wide receiver from Vanderbilt, a guy that, we talked about a lot going in that South Carolina Vandy game. Really surprising that he did not have a receiving touchdown in the 2023 season, but still a guy, guys, Lawrence, South Carolina. He's a hometown kid. That is where he hails from. I think someone that can come in and immediately play probably that Amarian Brown role, right? Be a speedster, and obviously you hope that his production is more so than what Amarian Brown gave you. I don't think he's a wide receiver 1. I don't see that, but I do think Jaden McGowan is a positive addition, certainly can be one of your top 2 or 3 wide receivers, and is certainly a starter for you going in the 2024 season. So I like the pickup of McGowan, what he will bring to the offense, adding another speedster. Speed is the name of the game for him. Should be a nice compliment and should be a nice weapon for Lenora Sellers at the quarterback position. Guys, I really like what Shane Beamer is doing on the defensive side of the football. Some of these defensive additions they have made, specifically defensive lineman DeAndre Jules from Pittsburgh and the edge Kyle Kennard from Georgia Tech. You start first with DeAndre Jules, guys. Had a great season this past season. His career statistics in 4 seasons for Pittsburgh. 35 total tackles, 3.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. But again, a lot of those stats, guys, came in this past season. So I think a guy that's going to provide size, he's going to provide quickness, agility in the defensive front as well. Again, can get after the quarterback, the type of player you need on your interior. And then you look at Kyle Kennard, guys, coming over from Georgia Tech. Spent 4 seasons in Atlanta, 115 total tackles, 21.5 tackles for loss, and 12.5 sacks. This was the type of player you had to go out and get, right? This was the kind of player, because we all know line of scrimmage was the issue for South Carolina, both offensively and defensively, right? And you can never have too many good pass rushers. That was something that South Carolina, I thought, lacked in 2023, and Kennard absolutely fills that void and fills a position of need for Shane Beamer and South Carolina moving forward. Those have probably been 2 of my guys' favorite additions for South Carolina. You start to shore things up on the defensive front. That's an area certainly that Travian Robertson, the defensive line coach, doing his best to improve. You also add guys over the weekend, tight end Brady Hunt coming in from Ball State. They like his athleticism. They like his speed a lot. I saw some people comparing him to Hayden Hurst, former Gamecocks tight end, which I think is a little bit aggressive, but you can see it with the skill set and what he's going to bring in, what he provides. This reminds me a lot, guys, of the Nate Adkins edition, right? Where it's a guy that comes from a lower level. You know, Nate Adkins wasn't some first-team all-SEC guy, but he made big plays for you. He was a nice role player. He played his role in the offense. He did make some game-changing plays. Nobody will ever forget that one-handed catch in the Clemson game. I think Brady Hunt could be that type of player coming in from Ball State. You then also yesterday had defensive back Gerald Kilgore, East Tennessee State transfer. Of course, he is the brother of Jalon Kilgore. How much does Gerald Kilgore play? I have no idea, guys. I have no idea. Torian Gray's done a really good job in his tenure coaching up defensive backs coming from lower levels, whatever. But I think Kilgore, I think it's a feel-good thing. Obviously, you add him. He's the brother of Jalon. It solidifies maybe that Jalon Kilgore is going to stay at South Carolina. And as much as that stinks to say, guys, you just never know, right? So anything you can do to make Jalon Kilgore feel good, a guy who's going to be one of your leaders on the defensive side moving forward, bringing his brother in, I think was a no-brainer. Finally, guys, a big one that came up late yesterday, and it's not official yet, but it is sounding like it's going to happen. Matt Zenitz, national 24/7 sports contributor, he reported, and Hale McGranahan of the Big Spur was reporting, they are expecting that A.J. Swan, Vanderbilt quarterback, will announce his commitment here in the near future. I think for the situation that South Carolina is in, where I think most feel really confident with LaNorris Sellers moving forward, that LaNorris Sellers, he is QB1. He is the quarterback of the future. So do you want to go out and get a Malik Murphy who's going to take his job or what have you? And I think you look at it this way. You want to go out and get the best possible player available. But is a guy like Malik Murphy or KJ Jefferson, are they really going to buy it to where when the coaching staff's talking about LaNorris Sellers and what they have in him? And I think South Carolina is very set on building the future of their program around him. Guys, there's just not many guys that are willing to come in and sit behind a freshman, right? A guy like Malik Murphy, the elite level player he is, he's going somewhere to be QB1. A guy like KJ Jefferson, I highly doubt is going to go anywhere to sit on the bench. You look at a guy like A.J. Swan. Is he coming in to sit the bench? Probably not. I think A.J. Swan's probably coming in to compete and try to win a starting job. But you do feel like that LaNorris Sellers more than likely should have the upper hand. But here's the thing, guys. And we talked about this, I think, early last week or a couple weeks ago, whatever. South Carolina had to boost their quarterback room. They had to add some competitive depth. I'm not saying they had to go out there and get a QB1 or get somebody who's going to take LaNorris Sellers' job, which we could spend an entire segment, by the way, on a separate issue of how it's kind of weird that people are just anointing someone as the starter when their only highlights have come against Furman and Vandy. And it's like, I would not blame Shane Beamer if he went out and got a Malik Murphy or he went and got KJ Jefferson, if he went out and added some elite level talent and some competition to the room and say, may the best man win. Because at the end of the day, who gives a damn who the starting quarterback is? The bottom line is, and it doesn't matter if it's Lenora Sellers at quarterback or KJ Jefferson or AJ Swan, if Carolina misses a bowl game yet again next year, nobody's going to give a damn who QB1 was. It's not going to make it feel any better. With that being said, I at least think AJ Swan is a guy most people feel like, okay, he's going to provide quality depth, but he's not going to steal the starting job. And moving off of this, guys, I'm seeing a lot of people commenting and asking, where the hell are the offensive line commitments? Where are the offensive line additions from the transfer portal? I would say this, guys. Number one, the dust has not settled, right? So I think you got to continue to trust Shane Beamer, let them work, and let them operate. The other thing I think you have to keep in mind with is this, guys, and you can agree with this, disagree, whatever. I'm not exactly sure it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. I have been really surprised, and I wonder if this is coming from the local media folks in Columbia, if this is just a fan thing, if this is coming from Shane Beamer himself. I am really, really surprised at the excuse making for the offensive line that I've seen from Gamecock Nation. I'm really, really surprised the amount of people who are willing to just completely write off what happened in 2023 to just purely injuries and move forward with the same exact offensive line room plus some freshmen, and they're going to feel good about that in 2024. Like, guys, did injuries play a role? Absolutely they did. But that offensive line was bad at baseline. That offensive line was bad at its healthiest. I don't think it would have mattered if you had 0 injuries in the offensive line room. The bottom line is that room needs to be improved. I think it would be a mistake for Shane Beamer and company to not add at least 2 or 3 offensive linemen who can come in, compete, fight for a starting job, and potentially be starters for you. It is not going to make anybody feel warm and fuzzy inside or feel good about things if you're going into 2024 with the same crop of guys that produced what you saw in 2023. Will they be better? Probably, because you can't be any worse. But are these guys all of a sudden going to turn to all SEC caliber players? Probably not, guys. So to all of those asking, listen, I don't know where the offensive line additions are, guys. But you got to think, you got to sit back, relax. You got to trust Shane Beamer if you're a Gamecocks fan. There's still a lot of time in the transfer portal, but certainly the time is ticking. And I do not think South Carolina, for what it's worth, I don't think the Gamecocks are done in the slightest when it comes to building and adding from the transfer portal. I think what Shane Beamer's showing you in this portal cycle, hey, South Carolina went 5-7. There was some less than stellar talent. There was some not SEC caliber talent on this roster. Out with the old, in with the new. I do not think South Carolina is done when it comes to adding talent in the transfer portal. Now, moving to Oxford and what Lane Kiffin is doing. Folks, Lane Kiffin is the king of the transfer portal. Let's just stop the count, stop the debate right now. Lane Kiffin and what Ole Miss, what they are doing, it's insane. And you can tell that Ole Miss, they've pushed all their chips in, right? They have pushed their chips in from the standpoint of, okay, we went 10-2 this year, got a chance to win an 11th game at a bowl game, do something that's never been done in school history, but now it's time to solidify, okay, we are a team to beat in 2024. 2024 is our year. Let's strike while the iron's hot. More than likely, you got Jackson Dart coming back. Quinshon Judkins is coming back. And who they're adding, what Pete Golding did with the defense this year, who Ole Miss is adding, are they not a shoo-in to be in the 12-team college football playoff at this point next year? You look at what Ole Miss has added, guys. Of course, we got to start with the very obvious. Juice Wells officially commits to Ole Miss yesterday. I know many a Gamecock fan feels some type of way. I'm not blaming you if you do, guys. That game, October the 5th at Williams-Brice Stadium, is going to be absolutely electric. But the thing that South Carolina fans hate to hear is when Juice Wells is healthy, guys, he's one of the best wide receivers in the SEC. And you can't deny that. You can't say that's not true because all of Gamecock Nation was touting him as one of, if not the best wide receiver in the SEC coming into 2023. So you add another weapon on the outside in Juice Wells. On the defensive side, you add the edge Princely Uman Mielen, which I'm probably mispronouncing that, from Florida. You add edge Tyler Barron from Tennessee. You've added linebacker Chris Paul Jr. from Arkansas. You've added potentially, this is rumored, by the way, there's a feeling most folks have nationally, locally, whatever, that they're going to add Walter Nolan, the Texas A&M transfer, the great defensive lineman. You've also added 4 defensive backs. You know, people got on Lane Kiffin about a month or so ago after the Ole Miss Rebels got blasted by Georgia, and he was very frank and very blunt, right? Hey, Georgia's got a lot of 5 stars. They got a lot of great football players. We got to go get us some more guys like that. We got to go out in the portal. We got to use NIL. And I know many go back to Lane Kiffin's NIL comments over the summer. And here's what I think Lane Kiffin is. Lane Kiffin's a guy, he's going to acknowledge and speak his mind. And he had very strong comments about NIL. It's doing this. It's doing that. But guys, when it comes to Lane Kiffin, don't hate the player, hate the game. Because as long as college football and college sports is like this, you're a damn fool if you do not play the game. And while Lane Kiffin, he may not agree with it, it may not be his favorite thing. Hey, Lane Kiffin said, if we got to do it, I'm going to be one of the best at it. So don't hate the player, hate the game when it comes to Lane Kiffin, NIL, and his stance. Because obviously the Grove Collective, which you got to give them a lot of credit. They've given him the support. They've given him the financial backing he needs to go out in the transfer portal and build one of the best rosters in the SEC. And I mean, guys, they're doing it, right? Because these guys they're taking, this isn't some diamond in the rough from an FCS school. This isn't some, oh, well, this guy was really good at this lower level. They're going out and getting SEC studs. Ole Miss isn't just getting some guy. They're going out and getting certified dudes in the transfer portal. And you look at the portal rankings over the last couple of years, they've been 3rd, 1st, 2nd. Lane Kiffin, guys, I think it's time we give him his due. He is the undisputed king of the transfer portal. And what's scary, the Rebels ain't done yet. The Rebels ain't done yet, man. So they've done a great job. I mean, again, adding impact type of talent. It reminds me a lot of what Florida State did last year, right? Going in the portal saying, hey, this next year with our quarterback returning, this is a year we can push all the chips in. We can get the backing. I'm sure Lane Kiffin is selling this to his people as well. We can get the backing we need. We can get the players we need. We've got the quarterback. We feel like we've got the coaching staff, and we can really make a serious run at this thing. You got to commend Ole Miss for the way they're attacking this thing. You got to commend Ole Miss for the players they're adding, the talent they're adding. It is wildly impressive, and it's safe to say that the king of the transfer portal resides in Oxford, Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels. Guys, let's jump into a quick break on the other side. Ironically enough, on the subject of Ole Miss, we're previewing, breaking down the Peach Bowl, Ole Miss and Penn State upcoming late next week, guys. We'll break down that game in its entirety, preview, predicted, all that good stuff, all that and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home. Call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle doggy ho, doggy ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Monday, December the 18th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Like I mentioned, guys, content bleeding out of the eyeballs today, double dipping with the guests. I want to say thank you so much again to Marc Ryan and our good friend Neil Shulman of inallkindsofweather.com for taking the time. Again, guys, really excited for bowl season. It'll begin next week, December the 27th. Then there was a day break. Then we get into December the 29th, and we're off and rolling with the SEC bowl games. That being said, guys, we continue breaking these things down, previewing them. Let's see. Okay, cool. Just reading a comment here. I got to stop reading the comments while I'm trying to do the show. Anyways, guys, tons to discuss, tons going on. We'll have more schedule talk, by the way, tomorrow. Didn't really get a chance to react to the 2024 schedules. We may even power rank who's got the toughest schedules going into 2024. That being said, though, guys, the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, Georgia, between the Ole Miss Rebels and the Penn State Nittany Lions. This one appears to be one of the best games of the bowl season. Kickoff is December the 30th, noon Eastern time on ESPN. Penn State is a 3.5-point favorite in this game. The over-under set at 48.5. And when you look at this ball game, guys, the top storylines, the chance at history for Ole Miss football is really where you have to begin, guys. They got all this positive momentum right off the field with the portal and what Lane Kiffin's doing in recruiting and really building that Rebels football program. It is crazy to think, though, right? We had our good friend Zach Berry of the Ole Miss Spirit on the show last week talking about, is this the golden age of Ole Miss football? What's crazy to think about, Ole Miss has never won 11 games in a season. Even South Carolina has done that 3 years in a row, I might add. So a chance at history here for Ole Miss with everything they're doing off the field, the way 2024 should set up for them, what getting that 11th win would do for Ole Miss, what it would signify in regards to the growth of the program, the acceleration of the program, the upward trajectory, and really serving as that launching point going into 2024. Guys, the hype's already going to be out of control for Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels, but you close out this season by beating Penn State. And again, guys, I've mentioned this before, this is a really bad game for the folks out there who try to tell you bowl games don't matter. Because I tell you this, Ole Miss beats Penn State, and they win their 11th game, first time in school history, winning 11 games in a season, there won't be a single person out there who's a fan of the Rebels who's going to tell you that a bowl game does not matter. And this is a big game for both programs, by the way, because these two programs are so accustomed to being a bridesmaid, never the bride, right? Not being able to win the big game. More on that in a second. Guys, I already mentioned this, but does positive portal momentum carry over? Does somehow the off-field momentum, does it carry over for Ole Miss, right? The vibes around the program are great. Now, when toe meets leather, does that really mean a whole lot? Probably not, but there's good vibes around the program off the field. You're adding these difference makers, right? They're all going to have an opportunity to watch your program and watch Ole Miss and watch what they do against Penn State, right? A brand name, if you will, in a big-time bowl game. Does this off-field momentum, does it carry on the field? And does Ole Miss play with an extra chip on their shoulder, some extra motivation, extra momentum, what have you? Going to be really, really interesting to see. Guys, I mentioned this before. A fascinating matchup between Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss and James Franklin at Penn State, because both have been really, really good at their respective schools. But the biggest knock against each of them is, well, they can't win the big game. Oh, you just can't win the big game, which, you know, I think is somewhat of a tired narrative, because it's like, I understand, right? Ole Miss has struggled in the big game, Penn State as well. But what position would you rather be in, right? Would you rather be in a position where, dang, you're just falling up short in those big games, or you never get to the big games? How about we give some credit to these two coaches for getting to the big game? With that being said, at these schools, you're not employed to just get there. You're employed to win it. So this is a big game for each respective head coach. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, James Franklin at Penn State. Who can win the big game? Because, again, these are two programs. They're so accustomed to being the bridesmaid, but never being the bride for whatever reason. Somebody's going to come out and go win a big game. Will it be Ole Miss or Penn State? We shall see. Now, guys, when it comes to on the field, how does Pete Golding's defensive attack, how do they defend against that Penn State rushing O, right? Pete Golding has done a fantastic job this year with the Rebels defense, but you look at Penn State, guys, they love to run the football. Nicholas Singleton leads their rushing attack. He's been very good. Katron Allen as well. They've really got a nice 1-2 duo back there. It's been a lot of fun to watch the way Penn State can throw people around, push people around. Drew Allar has been solid at quarterback, but I feel like he's more, maybe game manager is overly aggressive, but they lean on the running game. Let's just call it what it is. They lean on their running game. Certainly going to be a challenge. The physicality, right? The physicality of the Big Ten and what they provide on the offensive line. And can Ole Miss withstand that, right? I think Penn State's going to try to shorten the game up, limit the possessions. That's going to be a really fun matchup to watch in the ball game. Guys, also that moves into this, can Drew Allar do enough, right? Because you can't be one-dimensional. Drew Allar, the biggest gripe most people have with him when it comes to Penn State is like, he was solid, but he didn't make the big game-changing plays, right? When it came to big games against Ohio State, never made that game-changing play. He was okay, didn't throw hardly any picks this year, right? But just did not make the game-changing plays that a guy like Jackson Dart, on the other hand, for Ole Miss, has made a lot this season and is capable of making. So can Drew Allar do enough? Can Ole Miss limit him? If they can limit the rushing attack, can Drew Allar lift his team and use the passing game to lead them to victory? Guys, finally is this. My final thing is this. What's the magic number in this game? Penn State has done a great job defensively. They've held their opponents to 15 points or less in 9 of 12 games this season. They have been dominant defensively. I think 20 points is the magic number for Ole Miss. I think if they score 20 points or more, I think Ole Miss has got this in the bag. I do think, moving to my prediction, locking in my pick here, I do think Ole Miss, Pete Golding, I think he's going to have a great scheme in place. I think they're going to do enough to limit that Penn State rushing attack. I think this is going to be a great game, guys. I think this is one of the top games of bowl season. There's so much on the line here on both sides. Again, you can talk about bowl games don't matter, but similar to Missouri and Ohio State, even more so in this game, there's so much to gain from a game like this, winning a game like this for each of these respective sides. Both coaches need it, right, to show that, hey, we can win the big game here. We're setting ourselves up. Both of these teams factor in or look to be in the 12-team playoff race next year. A win in this one, though, what it would do to boost that, right, and to really, boost that offseason hype, that offseason momentum going into 2024 would be massive. That being said, guys, you look at this game, It's going to be a lot of physicality. It's going to be a lot of running game. Obviously, Ole Miss with Quinshon Judkins, they want to run the football. They need to run the football. Can Ole Miss, can they match the physicality of Penn State, slow down the running game? Again, they've got that two-headed monster at the running back position. They are fantastic when it comes to running the football. How many plays can Jackson Dart make in this game? Can they have a balanced attack, if you will, in this football game? 20 points is the magic number. I think Ole Miss will hit that and then some. When it comes to a game like this, very evenly matched, you got to take the quarterback you like more. I like Jackson Dart more in this football game than Drew Willard. I think this one's going to be a classic, guys, back and forth. I think Ole Miss has just enough guys. It feels like the stars are aligning for Ole Miss, right? You have a great 10-2 season, a season in which you only lost to Alabama and Georgia, right? The two teams that were literally in the SEC title game. You've got this offseason momentum, what Lane Kiffin and company are doing in the transfer portal. You know, I think Penn State's a really, really, really good team. But I think the Ole Miss Rebels, I think they'll find a way. I think Jackson Dart makes more plays than Drew Willard in this football game. I think both sides are keyed on the running game. I think that is going to be the biggest difference in this one. Also, Manny Diaz, right? Penn State's D coordinator. See you bye-bye. He is now the Duke head coach. So they've got some turnover of their own. Also, a couple of guys who have hit the transfer portal. I think Ole Miss has just enough guys. Lock me in. I've got the Rebels 23, Penn State 20. And what I think is going to be a really fun back and forth ball game. But I do think Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels, I think they will do just enough to edge out the Nittany Lions and get a massive win, their 11th win, and win 11 games in a season for the first time in school history. Guys, that being said, that's going to do it for the show. I think, let's see. We're going to look at some questions, see if we got anything. Couple texts here. Really no real daily mailbag segment, if you will, today. I apologize, guys. Obviously, very, very busy today. Lots and lots of content to get into and discuss and what have you. Let's see. I think we do have – I'm losing my mind here. Okay, I think we do have a text or two. 843-790-3377. Guys, that is the text line. Texter says, what's up, Chris? It's Robbie Davis, the Zaxby's Hall of Famer. Just wanted to give my predictions for the two basketball games tomorrow. For the men's game, I have the Gamecocks winning 75-67. They're playing Winthrop. The girls getting the W tomorrow, 95-70. Also, please keep my cousin Sarah Grace in your prayers. She is having back surgery today. Y'all pray for Robbie Davis's cousin, Sarah Grace. DGD says Zaxby's is mid. Those are fighting words. Those are fighting words for Robbie Davis. Guys, that being said, again, content bleeding out the eyeballs. Guys, I'm going on Marc Ryan's show today, 4:40 to 5. We actually continue along with the bowl game simulations today at 5 o'clock. We will simulate Missouri and Ohio State. So that one will be a lot of fun. Be sure to tune in, check that out. Hang out with us this afternoon as we continue the bowl game simulations. And guys, stay tuned to everything, all the content on social media, content bleeding out the eyeballs. And stay tuned, guys, for some big announcements we got upcoming. Could be sooner rather than later. Again, as I said, you're going to want to stay tuned for this. This one's monumental. This one's game-changing. You want to make sure you're paying attention over the next couple of days. Outside of that, guys, be sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications when we go live. We drop new video content as well. And also be sure to hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can check us out there at The Spurs Up Show. We drop daily podcasts and, of course, guys, daily content on social media. Guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. Appreciate each and every single one of you. Have a great rest of your Monday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.